Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to discuss to you what are relative coordinates in AutoCAD. Relative coordinates are different from absolute coordinates because absolute coordinates always refers to a fixed origin point located at 0, 0 in your Cartesian coordinate system. So here in relative coordinates we are using reference point. And what is this reference point? The reference point is the previous point that you have specified before you can create the next point. So like for example, let's try to solve this example here in order to better understand what are relative coordinates. So this is the object with its corresponding points and distance, and using these measurements we can identify the missing relative coordinates. So we use the starting point at point A with absolute coordinates. Again, why we specify the first point with absolute coordinates? Because again, we cannot create a relative coordinates without specifying the first point. And in order to do that, we need to use absolute coordinates. Alright, so we have here a value of x which is -2 and a value of y which is -1. So this is our starting point. And from A to B, we need to create a segment from A to B using the relative coordinates. And how are we going to do that? So here in relative coordinates, what happened is that the current value of your reference point will be reset. And what do you mean by reset? Meaning, we are going to disregard the current value of your previous point, which is -2, -1, and we are going to reset it with 0, 0. So all the values of your coordinates will become 0. Alright, so let's try. From A to B, so we will reset the value of A into 0, 0, and always remember that movement to the right in x-axis is signifying a positive number, and a movement to the left signifies a negative number. For your y-axis, an upward movement signifies a positive number, and a downward movement signifies a negative number. So from A to B, we move upward. That means we are going to use a positive number, which has a distance of 2. So the current value now for your A is 0, 0. So there is no movement for your x-axis, so we will just copy the value which is 0. So for your x, we will just input here 0 because there is no movement for your x. So it is easier to solve for relative coordinates compared with absolute coordinates, especially when we are dealing only with vertical and horizontal lines. Like here, we have A to B. We are making a vertical segment. So there is no movement for your x, so we will just input 0. So when there is no movement, we will just input a 0 value. Alright? So from A to B, we move upward. So 0 plus 2 is equal to 2. So we will just input here positive 2. It's easy as that. So from B to C, we move to the right. And we will now reset the value of B into 0, 0. We will disregard this previous value, which is 0, 2. Because in order to specify the next point, we need to reset its value. Alright, from B to C, we have the current value of B, which is 0, 0. And there is no movement for your y-axis. So we will just input 0 for your y. And a movement to the right for your x-axis, which is 0.8. So we will just input here a positive 0.8 value. Alright, so it's easy. So from C to D, as you can see, both x and y changes. So there will be no 0 value for your point D. So from C to D, we move to the right with 1.0607, and we move upward with 1.0607. both of them are positive. So we will just input here 1.0607, which is positive to both axes. Right? Next, from D to E, we move to the right, that is positive, and we move downward, and that is negative. So both X and Y changes. So from D to E, we move to the right at 1.0607. So that is positive. And 1.0607, which is negative for your Y. Negative 1.0607. Because we move downward. So it's easy, right? So from E to F, we move to the right at 0.8 direction. And it is in positive because we move to the right. So we will just input here in your X 0.8. And as you can see, there is no upward or downward movement. So we will just input here 0. Alright, next, from F to G, we move downward with a distance of 2. So that is negative because the direction is downward. So the value of your Y is negative 2. So in your X, because there is no movement, we will just input here 0. Next, from G to H, we move to the left. And the distance is 0.8. Because it is moving to the left, then we will use a negative number for your X. Negative 0.8. And there is no movement for your Y, so we will just input here 0. Alright, again, it's easy to input coordinates when we are only dealing with fixed vertical and horizontal because one of its values will always be 0. So, unlike here in diagonal direction, both of X and Y are changing its values. So, there will be no 0 values. So, next, we have H to I. So, from H to I, in this portion here, the fixed distance is 1.0607. So from H to I, we move to the left for your X. So that is negative 1.0607. And we move downward. So again, the Y value will still be negative 1.0607. Both of X and Y axis has a negative values. So from I to J, we move upward and to the left. So for your X, which is moving to the left, we have negative 1.0607. For your Y, there is an upward movement, so the value of your distance is positive 1.0607. And lastly, from J to A, back to the starting point, we move to the left. So the value of your X will be negative 0.8. And there is no movement for your Y-axis, so the value will remain 0. And that's it. We now have the relative coordinates of the remaining points from A to J and back to its starting point using the relative coordinates. So now we will now draw this object in our AutoCAD software. So to start, we will need to create using a line. Here we have here a line located in your Home tab. So the shortcut key for your line is letter L. Right, letter L. So always remember to turn on these drawing modes when dealing with 2D drafting so that we can easily deal with our commands. So first, turn on the polar tracking. Next is the object snap. Next, the object snap tracking. And lastly, our dynamic input. So take note of that. So now we will now start, create a line. So we will specify the first point. So this is very important when we are dealing with relative because we cannot create the next point without this previous point. So the first point is specified with absolute. So we have hashtag -2, comma, separated by comma. We have -1, and then press enter. Right. To move through the drawing, we can use the pan command. On how to do that, we need to press the mouse wheel and then hold, and you can drag the mouse. So you can move through the drawing. So we specified now our first point, which is point A. We will now move to point B using the relative coordinates which is 0, 2. So here in relative coordinates, the prefix that we need to use is the at symbol. At. So unlike relative absolute, we are using hashtag symbol. Here in relative, we use at symbol. Right? Then we can input now our x and y values, which is separated by comma. So 0, comma, 2. Then press enter. So we have now a segment from A to B. And another one is that we can actually omit typing at symbol for your relative coordinates, because it's already understood that when you are typing something in the command window without specifying the hashtag or at symbol, it will read the command as relative coordinates. So let's try without typing the at symbol. So the next point from B to C is 0.8, comma, 0. Press enter. Alright, we have now a segment from B to C. Next, from C to D, we have 1.0607, comma, 1.0607. And then press enter. Next, from D to E, we have 1.0607, comma, negative 1.0607, and then press enter. Next, from E to F, we have 1.0607, comma, and then, I'm sorry, we input the wrong value. So, in this case, I type a wrong value for your E to F segment. So, we will just press escape key, right, to cancel the command, and then use again a line command. And then, to specify the first point, we will just click here, the last point that we specified. So we can easily do this when we are turning these drawing modes on, right? So press the starting point. Next, specify the point E to F, which is 0.8, comma, 0. Press enter. Next, from F to G, we have 0, comma, negative 2, and then press enter. Next, from G to H, we have 0, comma, negative 2. Press enter. Sorry, again, we used a wrong input. So, from G to H, we have negative 0.8, comma, 0. So, take note, class, if you used a wrong coordinates, it will create a different segment from different directions. So make sure that you computed the correct value for your coordinates. Right? Next, from H to I, we have negative 1.0607, then comma, negative 1.0607, and then press enter. Next, from I to J, we have negative 1.0607, comma, 1.0607. Next, we have the last segment. From J to A, we have negative 0.8, then comma, 0. Then press enter. So now we are done drawing the object using the relative coordinates. Just press escape key to escape or cancel the command. Right?